Hey guys, Shani Raja here, and right now I'm going to go through an edit of a couple of pieces of writing, and the idea behind this is to show you how to apply some of the techniques that I've taught you in writing with Flair, so that you can begin to see how they would apply to a full document of writing. And I'm using kind of an edited version of stuff that I found on the web. So don't. I've edited it down myself just for educational purposes. So it's not to be taken as the exact version that you see elsewhere necessarily. So with that understood, I'm just going to show you how to apply some principles to the kinds of documents that might contain some of the issues that are covered in the course. So let's get started and have a look at this. This is a press release type thing from a company called the Linux Foundation, and they are basically making it known that they've released this course which helps developers of open source software, as it's called, to understand some of the licensing and legal issues around that. Now, I've deliberately chosen it because it's a rather technical document which does include some buzzwords and jargon that are familiar to people who are in that industry. However, for our purposes, we're just going to try and change that so it's a bit more user-friendly, and we're going to in particular look at applying the principles of simplicity, clarity, and elegance to this and another piece of writing that I'm going to show you later. Okay. So first of all, I'm just going to read through this document just so that you are familiar with it and we know what it's roughly talking about. And there might be things that are not clear and that you don't understand necessarily, and that I don't understand necessarily. But again, remember, the focus is on the principles, and we're just using it as a sample. So here we go. The headline is: The Linux Foundation announces free open source compliance course for developers. And then there's a subheading which says, new self-paced course makes licensing compliance new self-paced course that makes licensing compliance know-how easy for a new generation of developers. And right there you see how it's possible to slip up when language is used in a certain kind of way. So I already know that there's something that needs fixing there. Okay, so let's get on to the text. The Linux Foundation, the non-profit organization enabling mass innovation through open source, today announced the availability of Open Source Compliance Basics for Developers, LFC 191, a free course designed to provide software developers with knowledge about legal and licensing issues for building and using open source software. The new course complements the Linux Foundation's comprehensive professional open source compliance and management portfolio of services, which includes tools, training, and business and technology consulting that helps both developers and companies simplify development and speed innovation. So already you're beginning to see, I hope, that there are some room for improvement here in terms of simplicity, clarity, and elegance. So just begin to start thinking about that. Then there's a quotation: the easier it is to understand, comply with, and manage open source software and licensing, the more code that gets shared for everyone and the more innovation that takes place, said Linux Foundation Executive Director Jim Zemlin. By lowering the cost and complexity of compliance, we hope we can increase the ability for everyone to share. Then we're back to the narrative. Complying with open source licenses isn't difficult, but it does require training and is essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code bases today. That includes almost anyone building any kind of technology, as open source has come to occupy an increasingly large footprint in all technology products and services. Developers and professional open source managers need to acquire core competency in compliance and other areas of open source management. LFC 191 teaches developers about the central role of copyright in open source licensing, as well as important details on copyright law and patents as they apply to open source. The goal of the course is to help streamline the compliance process. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work and being able to clearly and accurately specify them is key to making sure that software is accepted in projects. Individuals interested in taking open source compliance basics for developers may register for the course at this address, website address. Those wishing to contribute feedback on the course and suggestions for improvement may do so by emailing this email address. So there we have a document which I hope you'll see that there is quite a bit of potential to use some of these principles, simplicity, clarity, and elegance, in order to make it more readable, more user-friendly, less technical, less abstract. Because the first thing you've got to think is, how easily did you grasp what's going on? Did you have to stop and think about it? Did it create any kind of abstractions in your mind that you couldn't quite place what it's saying? Or did every sentence read in a way that that really worked for you and made you grasp things? Or did, that's the kind of thing you've got to consider. And then you've got to start making changes in order to do so if you found that it was lacking in any of those regards. So here we go, and here's where I want you to think about those principles and think about how we could use them. So let's start with the headline. The Linux Foundation announces free open source compliance course for developers. Okay, so I'm just going to play around with it in a way that may hopefully just gives you some ideas about how you might work with something like this. So in a headline, the is always a kind of word that you can usually do without. So Linux Foundation, again, this is all to improve comprehension. Remember that we're trying to improve comprehension and beauty. Those are the two kind of goals of good writing. Linux Foundation announces. I always found announces also a little bit of a boring word, and it's not as active in this context as I think releases. You can see, Linux Foundation, they're actually releasing free open source, and we need a dash here for a hyphen, sorry. Free open source compliance course for developers. It's a bit of a long-winded title for me, and I'm taking off for developers because I want to draw attention and attract people to the core idea, which is Linux Foundation releases free open source compliance course. Okay, and that kind of immediately goes into your brain a little bit more strongly, forcefully than the previous one. When you have long headlines, it tends to kind of weigh you down a little bit. So you want to be able to read it in one breath and just sort of get it. I don't know, there probably is a company Linux, so ideally I would have wanted to do that, Linux releases, because that's even more easily comprehensible. But I think the word foundation here is important because it distinguishes it from another part of the company. So I'm going to just play it safe. And then we have this sub headline, or a kind of I forgot what you call it now, but a stand first, I think, is it? So you have a kind of a brief description of what's to follow. It's a kind of a second type of headline. So it says here, new self-paced course makes licensing compliance know-how easy for a new generation of developers. New self-paced course, that's okay. Makes licensing compliance. This is where I tripped up. Compliance know-how. If you took that off, it would just say new self-paced course makes licensing compliance easy for a new generation of developers. And I like that. It's much, you're not tripping up, and you're also just simplifying it as much as possible. So now you can see the impact here is far stronger for the person coming at this for the first time. So let's get into the text, okay? The Linux Foundation, the non-profit organization enabling mass innovation through open source. Sorry, there might be a stray apostrophe there. So let's say what this foundation is, and then what it today announced, the availability of open source compliance basics for developers. And then they go on to say a free course designed to provide software developers with knowledge about legal and licensing issues for building and using open source software. Now, you notice that that is a bit of a mouthful. And so we need to tackle this. It's what I referred to in the course as, making a thought too long, if you remember. So we're going to see a lot of opportunity for applying these concepts. Now, to make it much more readable, we can start attacking this from different perspectives. The Linux Foundation, the non-profit organization. Now, a non-profit is a well-known way of talking about an organization. So I think we can do without it. Remember the principle of, the fewer words, the better. Take out anything that you don't absolutely need. So let's say the non-profit or even a non-profit, okay, because we're describing the organization, a non-profit enabling mass innovation through open source. Again, that is really vague. Let's tell it like it is. A non-profit, you remember plain speaking? A non-profit supporting it's really supporting open source software development. Okay, we're getting a little bit clearer. Supporting open source software development. That's what it does. Okay, so now we've kind of simplified the description. A non-profit supporting open source software development. Okay. Today unveiled, let's say unveiled. It's a little bit nicer than announced, a bit boring. Today unveiled a course. Okay, so instead of getting straight into that kind of thick, dense fog of detail, okay, let's try to just say what they basically did, right? So I would say today unveiled a course helping programmers. So it's designed to provide software developers with knowledge about legal and licensing issues for building and using open source software. So I'm going to simplify that down quite a bit. Today unveiled a course helping programmers to better understand legal and licensing issues. Let's try a full stop there. Okay, they've unveiled a course that helps programmers better understand to better understand legal and licensing issues. Really clear and straightforward. And now we can bring in some of the other details. Okay, that it's a free course, so we could say the free course, okay, is called, okay, open source compliance basics for developers. And we can leave in the number that they give it, the code that they give it. So instead of free course with knowledge about that, we've got that higher up. So now a non-profit, the Linux Foundation, a non-profit supporting open source software development, today unveiled a course helping programmers to better understand legal and licensing issues. The free course is called Open Source Compliance Basics for Developers. Really clear, really simple. Okay. Now, how about this next thing? It gets a bit muddy here. The new course complements the Linux Foundation's comprehensive professional open source compliance and management portfolio of services. So it's some kind of complement to some existing portfolio of services, which includes tools, training, and business and technology consulting that helps both developers and companies. Again, a distinction between developers and companies. It throws me a little bit. I mean, I think they mean maybe, software companies in general, or developers and developers and companies associated with developing. And it helps them to simplify development and speed information. So it's about ease of developing things and it's the speed of developing things. So I want to try and change the language here a bit, okay? Because we ended with the free course is called so-and-so, we can say it, okay, instead of the course. It complements. I was a bit confused about complements. Is it part of this this portfolio of services, or is it complementing it just as something outside of that? I'm not sure, so I don't have the person to be able to check that. So the person who wrote it. So I'm going to make some assumptions here, which may or may not be wrong. So for apologies to the organization if I make any mistakes. Again, it's not it's only for the purpose of teaching editing and writing skills. So it complements a range, and I want to get to this idea, a range of software tools training and consultancy services, that, and let's just say the foundations, to shorten that, the foundations, and here we don't need a capital F. Foundations, comprehensive is a bit of one of those kind of unnecessary words. Professional open source compliance and management portfolio of services. We've said services now, so it complements a range of software tools, training, consultancy services that the foundations, professional open source compliance and management division, we could call it for now. Again, I'm not sure that it falls under the category, but I'm just trying to find ways of simplifying it. And we've got all this already now. And then we've got what's left. That helps both developers and companies simplify. So this is what it does for them, this range of tools. It complements a range of software tools and training and consultancy services. Might want to distinguish it like this. Oops, no. Here. That the foundations for this division has created to help developers and I think the distinction between companies and developers here is not all that big or important, although true, because you get independent developers who are not companies, but the developers, the companies that develop it are also developers. So I'm going to simplify here and say this division has created to help developers simplify development and speed innovation. Find that a bit clunky, not elegant. Make new applications more quickly and easily. Okay, so now we've started to get some more narrative definition in the text, I hope you see. So this course complements a range of software tools and training, we could say along with training and consultancy services that the Foundation's professional open source compliance and management division has created to help developers make new applications more quickly and easily. So notice the simplicity of that language, the plainness of that language, and notice how much more comprehensible the thing now is. Okay. Then we go into this quote. Okay, the easier it is to understand, comply with, and manage open source software and licensing, the more code that gets shared for everyone, and the more innovation that takes place. Said this person. By lowering the cost and complexity of compliance, we hope we can increase the ability for everyone to share. Okay, it's an okay quote. The only thing, and we can't really make changes within quotation because it's a quotation, and this is what the person said. There are times when, for brevity, you can edit like obvious words out, like I think it's easier. In some news organizations, they would allow you to take off these hedging type words because they don't interfere with the meaning, and as long as you maintain the integrity of the quote. Different people have different rules about that. You can decide what yours are. as long as you feel you can defend it. The easier it is to understand. So I'm okay with that quote. What I might make changes to is said Linux Foundation Executive Director. I always prefer to start, when you say said by someone, I prefer to start with the person who's saying it. I'll tell you why, because it's more human. You know, you immediately see a person in your mind, right? Said Jim Zemlin, comma, the Linux Foundation's Executive Director, and I've lowercase that because I'm using it as a description rather than a job title per se. And you know, that's my preferred house style. Okay, remember house style from the course as well. By lowering the cost of and complexity of compliance, we hope we can increase the ability for everyone to share. Okay, so that's the only change I'd make there. Moving on. Complying with open source licenses isn't difficult, okay, but it does require training and is essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code bases today. Code bases, are we getting into jargon territory there? Understandably, for the kind of company and organization this is, but for our purposes, we're going to try to get beyond that, okay? And I would say it doesn't, it still would be fine for a press release of this kind. Complying with open source licensing isn't difficult, but it does require, I like to have just for elegance, have a full stop there, okay? Boom. Complying with open source license isn't difficult, but it does require training, comma, bit of a nice elegant pause, and is essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code. I think that will suffice. Don't need today. Okay, it's essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code. Okay, that includes almost anyone building any kind of technology. Okay, I can see what they're getting at, but it's a little bit unspecific for me, so I'm going to actually get rid of that. I think we can do without it. Okay, as open source, okay, as open source now has come to occupy, let's just say, as open source occupies an increasingly large footprint. Do you occupy a footprint? So you see, it's a little bit of a funny image. So I don't think it quite works. So again, on this level, we can dive in and say, as if we're going to stick with occupies, we can either make something to fit with footprint, or we could use something to fit with occupies. So as open source occupies an increasingly large, a bigger plays a bigger role in, don't need all, in technology, products and services. It's kind of implicit. As open source plays a bigger role, I'm in two minds about that. I think products and services is a little bit, saying too much. All sorts of technology. It's kind of implicit, right? Developers, I think the idea here is that it's crucial for developers and professional and other related professionals, okay, to to acquire core competency in compliance. Again, core competency is getting into jargon territory there. To become competent. Acquire core competency. To become competent in compliance and other aspects of open source management. I like that much better. What do you think? Okay, and let's move on to the next bit. Now I hope you're seeing that we're really taking out all the bloated sentences, fixing the jargon, making it more elegant. We're doing all of that stuff that I've been teaching you, and the result is here for you to see, and I hope you do see it. So LFC 191 teaches developers about the central role of copyright in open source licensing, as well as important details. So this is back to the course now, right? Teaches developers about the central role of copyright in open source licensing, as well as important details on copyright law and patents as they apply to open source. Getting a bit circular and curly there. Notice that. The goal of the course is to help streamline the compliance process. So the course will streamline the compliance process. The goal of the course is to help developers streamline the compliance process. You can feel that it needs to be a little bit, bit more specific. Okay. Again, we have to sometimes guess what they're trying to do here because I don't have them to send it back to check. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work and being able to clearly and accurately specify them, again, very vague language, is key to making sure that software is accepted into projects. Okay, I won't be able to solve all of this because I don't know what they mean. As an editor, I may delete things or seek clarification, but let me just try here. So I want to avoid getting technical whenever possible and keep it user-friendly. The new course, right? We've said what the number of it is up top. We don't have to repeat it. So again, the concept of not repeating there. It's okay to do it in this context, but the reason I'm not doing it now is because it's just unnecessarily technical. The new course, I would just simplify this to say explains the key role of copyright in open source licensing. Okay, so that's one thing it explains, and how copyright law, as well as important details on copyright law. Instead of that, let's just be straight specific, and how copyright law and patents apply to open source technology. I'm noticing a word echo here. The new course explains the key role of copyright in licensing, okay, open source licensing, and how copyright law and patents apply to. We could solve it in a number of ways: related technology or associated technology. Okay, to get rid of the word echo. Meaning, we could also leave it here and just remove it from here because we're talking about open source throughout, so people will not be too thrown by that. So they say the new course explains the key role of copyright in licensing and how copyright law and patents apply specifically to open source technology. For me, that works okay. Again, I'm doing this on the fly, and again, this is just a the first process of an edit. So, we would go back and try and refine it further. And I'm just trying to introduce you to some of the processes. The new course explains the key role of copyright in licensing and how copyright law and patents apply specifically to open source technology. Okay. The goal of the course is to help streamline the compliance process. Another way of saying it, the new course that is, also help to make the compliance process easier to follow, to streamline the compliance process. The word streamline there is so vague as to be unhelpful. This just makes it a little bit friendlier. It will also help, the course will also help to make the compliance process easier to follow, which I guess is the end result of streamlining it. You might find a better way than that. I'm thinking off the cuff here. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work and being able to clearly and accurately specify them is key to making sure that software is accepted into projects. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work is key to making sure and being able to clearly and accurately specify them. It's getting a bit over the top wordy, and again with such vague and abstract language that it's not actually helping us to understand anything. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work is key to making sure that software is accepted in and I'm kind of guessing that and hoping this will be right, in open source projects. I'm just trying to pin it down here. Forgive me if I've misinterpreted, but more important is to understand the process of trying to pin it down. And I would obviously seek clarification from the person. Is that what you meant? And then that would force them to say, no, I meant this. And then you would make the necessary adjustment, but you're ending up with something that is specific rather than vague and abstract. Okay. Now, individuals interested, and this is the last paragraph here, individuals interested in taking open source compliance basics for developers, that's the title of the course they've given again, may register for the course at this, and those wishing to contribute feedback on the course and suggestions for improvement may do so by doing this. Again, very easy opportunity to simplify this and make more elegant, to register for open source. It's okay here to remind people the name of the course. To register for open source compliance basics for developers. You could also italicize the title of the course whenever you say, mention it, just so it stands out a bit more. Visit. Now, isn't that a lot cleaner? And how about this? Those wishing to contribute feedback. Okay, to share your feedback. Again, less official, right? To share your feedback on the course, or to suggest improvements. Please email, if you want to be polite, and then you leave the email address. Okay, so what I'm going to do, that's the edit, the simplicity, clarity, elegance edit, and I want you to remember how the piece looked before. I won't read it back to you again because it's very long, but you remember how kind of dense and unwieldy it was to read. Now see if this is a little bit better. Okay, we can again go through further and further and further refinements, and I generally would. This is like a first edit. But here's how it would read. Linux Foundation releases free open source compliance course. New self-paced course makes licensing compliance easy for a new generation of developers. The Linux Foundation, a non-profit supporting open source software development, and now I tripped a little bit there, so that supports. Okay, let's try that again. The Linux Foundation, a non-profit that supports open source software development, today unveiled a course helping programmers to better understand legal and licensing issues. The free course is called Open Source Compliance Basics for Developers, LFC 191. It complements a range of software tools along with training and consultancy services that the Foundation's professional open source compliance and management division has created to help developers make new applications more quickly and easily. We could open source applications. We could add that in if it helps. You know, I'm kind of weighing that. It does kind of repeat what's in the title, but it's not exactly a word echo in the traditional sense. Okay. Then we get the quote. The easier it is to understand, comply with, and manage open source software and licensing, the more code that gets shared for everyone and the more innovation that takes place, said Jim Zemlin, the Linux Foundation's executive director. By lowering the cost and complexity of compliance, we hope we can increase the ability for everyone to share. Complying with open source licenses isn't difficult, but it does require training and is essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code. Okay. As open source, we've got a lot of repetition of open source. It's difficult to get out of that. I'd need more time to really find ways of avoiding such word echoes. We'll try for now as a kind of, as it plays a bigger role. You could say that it's essential for anyone building or contributing to open source code. Yeah, as it plays a bit here, the it refers to open source code, so it might be okay. That's my initial thought. So let's try it like that. As it plays a bigger role in all sorts of technology, it's crucial for developers and other related professionals to become competent I'm not so happy with related now. Other professionals in the field to become competent in compliance and other aspects of open source management. The new course explains the key role of copyright in licensing and how copyright law and patents apply specifically to open source technology. It will also help to make the compliance process easier to follow. Understanding how copyrights and licenses work is key to making sure that software is accepted in open source projects. To register for Open Source Compliance Basics for Developers, visit this place. To share your feedback on the course or suggest improvements, please email this place. So I hope that's been an eye-opener for you. People often say that it's really helpful to see the process of editing taking place, and if you agree, let me know. And I hope I've proved the point that applying these principles to a piece of writing can make quite a dramatic difference to how it reads and how it feels to read. So thank you for listening. I hope that's been insightful and helpful. Cheers, guys.